There's this weird moment that happens to a lot of people, maybe it's happened to you, where you're sitting at your desk on a Monday morning, coffee going cold next to your keyboard, and you open your banking app kind of out of habit. And you see your paycheck hit, the one you worked 40-something hours for, the one you stressed for, commuted for, sat through 3 pointless meetings for. And right below it, almost like an afterthought, you see a number. A different number. Dividends deposited. Or maybe it's the value of your portfolio and it went up over the weekend. Not because you did anything, but just because it did. And for most people, that second number is tiny. Like laughably small compared to the paycheck. Maybe it's $12, maybe it's $40, and you kind of laugh it off. But something about seeing it sitting there, just existing, just showing up without you having to earn it. Something about that sticks with you. My name is Josh, and I spend probably too much time thinking about money, and more specifically, about the way money changes people. Not in the shallow, he bought a Ferrari kind of way, but the deeper, quieter, almost invisible ways that a person's relationship with time and work and identity starts to shift when their financial life reaches a certain tipping point. I've talked to people who've been through it. I've read the research. I've watched it happen. And what I've noticed is that when someone's investment income, their passive income, their portfolio returns, whatever you want to call it, when that number finally catches up to, or surpasses, what they earn from their job, something changes in them. Not overnight. And not always in the ways you'd expect. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Not how to get there, though we'll touch on that, but what actually happens to a person when they get there. Because honestly, I think understanding the destination changes how you feel about the journey. And some of what I'm going to share might surprise you. Here's the thing that nobody really talks about. The shift doesn't start when your investment income equals your salary. It starts way, way earlier. It starts the first time you actually believe it's possible. There's this concept in behavioral psychology sometimes called a reference point update. Basically, the moment your brain revises what it thinks is realistic for you. Most of us grow up with this invisible ceiling in our heads. Work hard, get paid, spend most of it, save a little, repeat until retirement. That's the script. And we don't even question it because it's all we've ever seen modeled. Our parents did it. Our neighbors do it. Our co-workers definitely do it. But then someone, maybe it's a YouTube video, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a friend who casually mentions their Vanguard account over dinner, someone cracks the ceiling just a little bit, and suddenly your brain goes, oh, that's an option. I remember reading once about a woman, let's call her Diane because that feels right, who worked as a dental hygienist for about 15 years. Solid job, good pay, but she always felt like she was running on a treadmill. Then her brother-in-law, who was not some Wall Street genius, just a regular guy who'd been quietly maxing out his 401k and investing in index funds for a decade, showed her his brokerage statement at Thanksgiving. He wasn't showing off. He was just sharing. And Diane said it was like someone turned a light on in a room she didn't even know existed. She didn't change her behavior overnight, but her reference point updated. And that's step one. What tends to happen after that is a slow, almost imperceptible reorientation. The way you think about your job starts to shift. Not that you hate it, but you start seeing it differently. Instead of your job being the thing that funds your life, it starts being the thing that funds your investments, which fund your life. That's a subtle distinction, but it changes everything about how you show up on a Monday morning. Okay, so here's where it gets genuinely interesting, and a little uncomfortable. When investment income starts creeping towards salary-level territory, a lot of people expect to feel, I don't know, triumphant? Like they've unlocked a cheat code. And sometimes that's there. But more often, what people describe is this quiet, unsettling sense of identity confusion. Because for most of us, what we do for money is deeply tied to who we think we are. Think about it. The first thing we ask each other at parties is, "So what do you do?" We don't ask, "What are you building?" or "What do you believe in?" We ask what we do. For money. As if the transaction of selling your time to an employer is the defining fact about you as a human being. So when that transaction starts becoming optional, or at least less urgent, people don't always know how to handle it. There's this fascinating psychological experience called role exit that sociologists study, where people who leave a strongly defined social role, doctors who retire, military veterans who come home, stay-at-home parents returning to work, they go through a period of genuine disorientation. Because the role wasn't just a job, it was a container for their identity. The same thing happens, in a quieter way, when financial independence starts becoming real. You've spent 15, 20 years being the person who works hard to make ends meet. You've built a personality around hustle, around sacrifice, around the narrative that you earn what you get. And when passive income starts quietly undermining that narrative, when money shows up that you didn't grind for, some people feel almost guilty about it, like they're cheating somehow. I've heard people describe this strange discomfort where they'll look at their portfolio on a weekend and feel vaguely uneasy that it went up, like they didn't deserve it, like they need to justify it somehow. And here's what I find fascinating about that. It means the emotional work of reaching financial independence is actually harder than the financial work. The math is doable. The psychology is the real challenge. But, and this is important, the people who push through that disorientation, who allow themselves to update their identity from person who earns to person who also builds, those people tend to come out the other side with a clarity that is genuinely kind of beautiful to witness. If I had to pick the single most profound shift that happens when investment income starts matching salary, it's this. Time stops being something you trade and starts being something you own. That sounds abstract, so let me make it concrete. Most people, almost all working adults, operate under what economists call a time for money model. You show up, you do things, you get paid. The exchange rate might be good or bad, but the structure is the same. Your time is a resource you sell to someone else, and they decide what it's worth. When passive income enters the picture in a meaningful way, that model breaks down, because now money is showing up without you selling time at all. And slowly, almost involuntarily, you start looking at your calendar differently. Here's a small, very human thing that happens. People start getting more annoyed by meetings, not because they suddenly become lazy, they don't, but because they've started to internalize the real cost of their time. And a 1-hour meeting where nothing is decided starts to feel like a genuine offense, like someone reached into their pocket and took something. On the flip side, and this is the more beautiful part, people start investing time in things that don't have an immediate monetary return. Relationships, health, learning things just because they're interesting. There's research suggesting that people with greater financial security tend to spend more time in what psychologists call flow states, those experiences of deep engagement where you lose track of time entirely. Because when you're not constantly calculating the hourly worth of every activity, you can actually be present in it. I talked to someone. He was an engineer, mid-40s, had been building his investment portfolio for about 12 years, and he described the moment his dividend income crossed his monthly salary as feeling like taking off a weighted vest I didn't know I was wearing. He still went to work. He still cared about his job, but everything felt lighter. He wasn't there because he had to be. He was there because he chose to be. And that distinction, chosen versus obligated, changes the quality of everything. Here's something that trips people up because it feels counterintuitive. You'd assume that someone whose investment income just surpassed their salary would start spending more freely, right? Like, okay, the money's flowing, loosen up a little. But the data, and anecdotally this tracks, suggests the opposite often happens. People at this stage frequently become more intentional spenders, not less careful ones. Why? A few reasons. First, by the time someone has built investments significant enough to generate salary-level income, they've usually been living below their means for years. That habit is deeply ingrained. It's not deprivation anymore, it's just who they are. They've gone through the phase of wanting the things and realizing the things don't actually deliver what they promised, and they've come out the other side with cleaner, more honest preferences. Second, and this is the psychological piece, there's a concept called loss aversion asymmetry that intensifies the closer you get to a meaningful financial milestone. Basically, as the thing you're building becomes real and tangible, the fear of losing it grows proportionally. You're not scared of being poor anymore. You're scared of going backwards. And that fear, weirdly, keeps spending in check. Third, and maybe most interesting, once you understand how money compounds, you can never look at a purchase the same way again. You start doing the math automatically. This $500 gadget, if I invested it instead, at historical market returns, in 15 years, that's roughly. And sometimes you still buy the gadget, but you do it consciously. You're not being sold to anymore. You're choosing. This shift in spending psychology is, I think, one of the most underrated benefits of reaching this milestone. Not the financial freedom itself, but the clarity it creates. The noise goes quiet. The marketing loses its grip. You start buying things you actually value and stopping buying things you were just told to value. It sounds small, but it's quietly radical. I want to be really careful here because there's a popular narrative that goes, once I have enough passive income, I'll quit my job and travel the world and never look back. And look, for some people, that's genuinely the dream, and they pursue it and love it. No judgment. But for a surprising number of people, that's not what happens. And not because they're stuck or scared, but because their relationship with work transforms into something they didn't expect, meaning-seeking rather than money-seeking. Here's what tends to happen. When the financial pressure lifts, when showing up tomorrow is a choice rather than a necessity, people start asking a question they never had the luxury to ask seriously before. Do I actually like this? Does this matter to me? And the answers vary wildly. Some people discover with a kind of relieved surprise that they genuinely love what they do, that they'd do it even if they weren't paid, that the job they resented for years was actually full of meaning they'd stopped noticing because they were too stressed about money to notice anything at all. Others discover the opposite, that the resentment was real and valid, and the job was never a fit, and now they're finally free to do something about it. What both groups share is intentionality. They're not drifting through a career anymore. They're actively choosing. And chosen work, even if it's the same work in the same building with the same people, has a completely different texture than obligated work. There's also this interesting side effect where people become better at their jobs. I know that sounds weird. Shouldn't the person who needs the money be more motivated? But it turns out anxiety and financial stress are terrible for performance. The research on cognitive load and financial worry is pretty sobering. One study found that worrying about money can reduce effective IQ by roughly 13 points in certain tasks. That's significant. So when the financial anxiety lifts, the mental bandwidth that was quietly being consumed by that worry becomes available for actual thinking, actual creativity, actual presence. And people's work often improves, even as it becomes less central to their identity. The last thing I want to talk about is maybe the most underestimated part of this whole transformation, and that's the way it radiates outward. When one person in a social circle or a family reaches this kind of financial turning point, it shifts the ecosystem around them, not always dramatically, often quietly. But it shifts. Relationships change. People at this stage tend to shed relationships built entirely around financial stress or financial comparison, the friendships that existed mainly to commiserate about being broke, or the social circles where spending was the primary form of bonding. They start gravitating toward people who are curious, intentional, and building something. Not because they're snobs, but because they've changed what they value, and naturally, who they spend time with changes too. Family dynamics shift. If someone grew up in a household where money was a source of constant tension, reaching this milestone can be quietly revolutionary. It breaks a pattern. It shows the next generation, their kids, their younger siblings, whoever's watching, that the script can be rewritten, that the treadmill is optional. That's an enormous gift, and most people who've experienced it describe it as one of the most meaningful parts of the whole journey. And honestly, the way they talk about money changes. The anxious, defensive quality that a lot of us have around money conversations, the way we deflect or minimize or catastrophize, that starts to soften. They become more open, more generous with what they know, more willing to help the people around them understand what they've figured out, because they're not scared anymore. And fear was always what made money conversations so fraught. So here's where I want to land. The transformation I've been describing, the identity shift, the changed relationship with time, the cleaner spending, the chosen work, the ripple effect, none of that happens because someone hit a number. Numbers don't change people. Understanding does. Patience does. Intentional, consistent decision-making over a long period of time does. The people who experience this transformation aren't geniuses. They're not lucky, mostly. They're people who made a decision at some point. Sometimes young, sometimes embarrassingly late, sometimes in the middle of a financial crisis, to stop treating their salary as the ceiling of their financial life and start treating it as raw material. Fuel, the thing you use to build the thing. And the building takes time. Of course it does. There will be years where the investment income is $12 and $40 and $300, and it feels almost insulting compared to what you earn at work. That part is real. The impatience is real. The doubt is real. But here's what I want you to hold on to. The psychological transformation I've been describing doesn't start when the numbers are equal. It starts when you believe they could be, when your reference point updates, when you decide to take the ceiling seriously, the Diane who saw her brother-in-law's brokerage statement at Thanksgiving. She told me later that the thing that changed her wasn't the number she saw. It was the realization that he was just a person, ordinary, no special advantage, no insider information, just someone who had quietly, consistently shown up for a long time. You can be that person for somebody else someday. But first, you have to let yourself be that person for yourself. Start small, stay consistent, and pay attention, because the changes when they come will be quieter and stranger and more profound than you expect. If you found this video informative, make sure to press that subscribe button, like this video, and comment your thoughts. I read every single one of it. Now, if you want to learn more and dig deeper into this topic, join the Investing Society community. Link is in the description. Now, thanks for watching and see you in the next video.